Okay, welcome everyone. We're here on Wednesday, September 4th at 6:30 p.m. in Council Chambers in the municipality of North Grenville. It's been a busy day for lots of families in our community as it was the first day back to school for several school boards. So we certainly hope that everyone had a safe and successful first day. I know I had my three school-age kids started in a new school, and they were anxiously awaiting the morning. One is going into grade 7, one is going into grade 9, and one is returning to her school for grade 11. So lots happening this morning to get them out the door and ready. And fully engaged as we transition from summer into fall. Earlier today, we raised the Childhood Cancer Awareness Flag with G's Gang founder, Lyle Jalota, and Lisa Neal. Lisa can't be here tonight, but we look forward to welcoming Lyle a little bit later for a quick delegation. Of course, thanks to those who joined, and we send our hearts, obviously, to the brave kids and very brave parents who are affected by childhood cancer. Obviously, the innovations in research are very heartening to see, and we know that every dollar raised in this community supports CHEO's research wing for childhood cancer, and it means an incredible amount to those families who have been affected, are being affected, or may be affected in the future. And once again, this community is known for its incredible generosity and its spirit of caring. So thank you to all those who continue to work with council and the community to mark Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. This past week, we saw goodbye to some local outdoor musical series, including the inaugural South Branch Serenade series, which ended last Thursday, but was a weekly free musical gathering in Rotary Park. We also, of course, welcomed over the summer the Kemptville Street Piano series, and they ended with a bang on Saturday with Ottawa bluesman Jeff Rogers. So really great public musical events in our community, which help to enhance our downtown, and of course, they complement so many other fabulous summer activities here in North Grenville. And then I'd also like to give a shout out to the Kemptville Jags. Our local football club has been revitalized, is growing, and they had their first home games on the weekend. Their field is located on an old CFL practice field at Kemptville campus, if you don't know. And the field is in incredible shape. It's one of the only grass fields in the region. And it's welcomed so many families who are new to football and some who are returning to football. We're really excited that we were able to, as a municipality, partner with Kemptville campus in a fully lit field so that the football season can continue into the fall. They also have a state-of-the-art scoreboard and a small concession building for snacks. So just have to tell you, if you're looking for something to do on one of those home game weekends, you will find a lot of happy kids and happy families at the Kemptville Jags football field on Kemptville campus. And then finally, we do have to say that the municipality is now fully engaged in a series of official plan consultations. An official plan, I didn't know what an official plan was before I was elected. I had some vague idea, but truly, it was a bit of a mystery to me. It's effectively a master planning document for your community. It contemplates commercial activity, residential activity, how people get around, what amenities are provided, how do we forge a quality of life that people really value here, whether they've been here for generations or just a few months. So there's lots of opportunities to engage, and if you go to our website, northgrenville.ca, you'll see some virtual and in-person opportunities to give us your opinion, and this is a community that isn't shy about sharing their opinion, so please use this moment and this month to really give us your feedback. And then just shifting into my warden capacity at the United Counties, I did just want to note that this morning we welcomed a report from our Director of Public Works in regards to County Road 19 and some very serious speeding and traffic collision issues we've had in that stretch of road. And I'm happy to report that later in this month, County Council will be considering a permanent speed reduction along that stretch of road and some additional measures to slow people down and ensure that the safety of pedestrian and vehicular traffic is honored. So more to come on that. That's not so much a municipal matter, but a county matter, but something obviously that has been of great concern to many here in North Grenville. So with that, it's a rather long intro to our meeting, but welcome back, council colleagues. Councillor Strachan is traveling. She has a superstar daughter who's currently training to compete with Team Canada in Thai boxing. And her daughter and Councillor Strachan are spending approximately, I think, 5 weeks getting ready for and ensuring that Mabel Roberts competes successfully, and she is a formidable athlete, and we're so proud of Mabel and our Boss Thai Boxing Studio, who in fact have facilitated and created the conditions for an excellent training environment for Mabel and so many other youth in our community. So with that, I'll call the meeting to order, and I'll invite a council colleague to read our land acknowledgement. So I have 2 on this side and 1 I can't see. Councillor Wilson, we're going to move that screen so I can see you. There you go. Now I can see you. Wonderful. So can I invite a council colleague to read the land acknowledgement, please? Anyone?
Sure. The municipality of North Grenville acknowledges that the municipality operates on the territory of the Anishinaabe. We recognize all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples who now call North Grenville their home. We respect and support the need for cultivating a strong relationship, and we commit to Indigenous-informed decision-making to foster the path towards reconciliation.
Thank you. So now we'll go to the approval of the agenda. Council colleagues, the agenda for September 4th, 2024 is before you. Any comments or questions on the agenda? Seeing no hands, I'll look for a mover and a seconder. Councillor Wilson, thank you. Deputy Mayor Barclay, thank you. And I'll call the question. All in favor? Great. Excellent. So we have no closed this evening. I will look for disclosures of interest in regards to any declarations of perceived or real financial benefit or loss arising from tonight's meeting. Seeing no disclosures, I'll move on. Next, we have a number of presentations and delegations in regards to Rail Safety Week, as well as Childcare Worker and Early Childhood Educator Appreciation Day. I'm wondering if one of my council colleagues would like to read the motion for the Rail Safety Week 2024. Okay, fire away, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, happy to. Whereas Rail Safety Week is held across Canada from September 23rd to 29th, 2024, whereas 229 railway crossing and trespassing incidents occurred in Canada in 2023, resulting in 66 avoidable fatalities and 39 avoidable serious injuries. Whereas educating and informing the public about rail safety, reminding the public that railway right-of-ways are private property, enhancing public awareness of the dangers associated with highway rail grade crossings, ensuring pedestrians and motorists are looking and listening while near railways, and obeying established traffic laws. This will reduce the number of avoidable fatalities and injuries caused by incidents involving trains and citizens. Whereas Operation Lifesaver is a public-private partnership whose aim is to work with the public, rail industry, governments, police services, media, and others to raise rail safety awareness. And whereas CN and Operation Lifesaver have requested the Municipal Council adopt this resolution in support of its ongoing efforts to raise awareness, save lives, prevent injuries in communities, including North Grenville. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of North Grenville proclaim the week of September 23rd to September 29th, 2004 as Rail Safety Week.
Excellent, thank you. So Deputy Mayor, can I consider that you'll move that then?
Yes, I'll move.
Thank you. And a seconder, please, Councillor Wilson. Thank you. Any questions or concerns, colleagues? We do have a number of rail crossings, of course, in North Grenville. And, obviously from time to time, we hear from people who have concerns about the safety and sight lines, and certainly where problems or concerns have been flagged. I know we work very closely with CP and other train companies to ensure that rail safety is being adhered to. And of course, we have a good relationship with the Ministry of Transportation as well. So in the absence of any other comments or questions, I'll call the vote. All in favor, please? Great. Thank you. All right. Next is our Childcare Worker and Early Childhood Educator Appreciation Day. For all those parents who availed of childcare over the summer and continue to into the fall, or have ECEs in their classrooms, we know how invaluable ECEs are to the socio-psychological and educational development of children, and I can personally attest to how important they have been in the lives of my children. So looking for, Councillor Wilson, would you like to read that motion, please? There you go. We're good.
This is a test
It's a test.
on my nerves.
Well, I'm glad we asked you to read it so we can at least resolve the mic issues. So
There we go.
fire away.
Whereas years of research confirms the benefits of high quality early learning and childcare for young children's intellectual, emotional, social, and physical development and later life outcomes. Whereas childcare promotes the well-being of children and responds to the needs of families and the broader community by supporting quality of life so that citizens can fully participate in and contribute to the economic and social life of their community. Whereas trained and knowledgeable registered early childhood educators are the key to quality in early years and childcare programs, in licensed childcare, early on programs, child life programs, and full-day kindergarten. Whereas registered early childhood educators and childcare workers will be vital to the success of Canada-wide early learning and childcare system. Therefore, be it resolved that Council of the Municipality of North Grenville hereby proclaim October 24th, 2024 as Child Care Worker and Early Childhood Educator Appreciation Day, in recognition of the education, dedication, and commitment of child care workers to children, their families, and quality of life of the community.
Thank you. And Councillor Wilson, can I consider that you've moved that? Excellent. Seconder, please. Councillor Sullivan. Great. Any comments or questions on this one? All right. Good. Then I'll call the vote. All in favor, please. That carries. Thank you very much. And finally, in our delegations this evening, it's my pleasure to welcome Lyle Jalota to come up and make a brief presentation on Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. Welcome, sir, and you just have to turn on your mic and maybe lower it a little bit. Perfect. Thank you. It should work. We'll have our clerk come and troubleshoot. I don't think it's you, I promise. You good to go? Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Peckford and council members for having us here tonight and for declaring September Childhood Cancer Awareness Month in North Grenville. My name is Lyle, and I am one of the co-founders of G's Gang. This is our childhood cancer story. I'm not here to tell you statistics and numbers. I want to give you the reason why G's Gang exists today. My wife and I were approached in October 2010 to become foster parents to a medically fragile young lady. After much discussion, we agreed to it. Our daughter, Jatita, had just been returned from the Toronto Sick Kids Hospital after having a bone marrow transplant. We made many fun adventures and made lasting memories with her in and out of CHEO. Ronald McDonald House. Sorry, it's just going to change. Sorry. Ronald McDonald House was a lifesaver for us as well. Staying there on several occasions gave us a chance for our entire family to be together. Sadly, G was diagnosed with bladder cancer in December of 2011. After many complications, we lost G on May of 2012. As a family, this was hard for us, but we knew that we knew how much G had changed our lives. We have been very active participants in a Canadian Cancer Society's Neon Night event, being the top fundraising team every year since it was started. We raised phenomenal amounts of money, somewhere around $30,000 in her memory. Unfortunately, in 2021, the Cancer Society chose to cancel that event. G's gang continued on despite. We fundraise every year. This year, through a couple different fundraisers, we will actually be splitting some proceeds that will go to a couple local families that are battling childhood cancer. We have been overwhelmed by the response of this community, our family, and our friends. You'd be very proud. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here and telling your story. And I want to highlight to my council colleagues that we've received a request to potentially support some of the renovations that are happening at the Ronald McDonald House in Ottawa. Remarkably, the City of Ottawa has been very generous in providing millions of dollars in funding to expand the Ronald McDonald House to largely serve non-residents. The people who use Ronald McDonald House don't overwhelmingly live in Ottawa. They live in outer lying communities like ours. A request came in last year, and because of some other commitments to hospitals and healthcare funding, we weren't in a position to provide a contribution, but I would like to urge council colleagues as we go into another budget cycle to potentially give serious consideration to donating this year. Ronald McDonald House has been a lifeline for so many communities, and I'm urging my mayor and county colleagues throughout the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville to make a similar contribution to certainly a facility and a home away from home that allows families some normalcy, if that's even possible, under these conditions, but at its core, enables families to be together with children who are being treated and sometimes can't return home during treatments. So Lyle, thank you for sharing your story. It's one of incredible compassion and generosity and strength, and we're so thrilled to see the flamingos circulate around the community this year. G's Gang really does it in style in regards to some of their fundraising efforts, so I'm sure you'll make the rounds with council and so many others in the community. So with that, the recommendation, colleagues, is that council proclaim the month of September 2024 as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month in North Grenville and direct the Childhood Cancer Awareness flag to be raised September 1 through 30th, 2024 inclusive. So look for a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Wilson, looking at you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And I presume I can call the question on that, colleagues? All right, all in favor? Good. Thank you. So next we'll move to the consent agenda. Items listed under the consent agenda are considered routine and no longer require further discussion. However, of course, any member of council may request that one or more items be pulled from the consent agenda. So colleagues, you have the proposed items for the consent agenda under the section I, and I believe, Deputy Mayor, that you had advised me that you wanted to pull I.3 in regards to the amending agreement for the Integrity Commissioner. Is that still the case? Okay, well, I will pull it then. Okay, All right, I can certainly pull it. I think there was a modification in regards to the term. Okay, okay. So we'll pull that one. Is there anything else that council colleagues would like to have removed? Seeing nothing, then I'll look for a mover and a seconder for the adoption of the consent agenda as amended. Deputy Mayor, thank you. Councillor Wilson, will you second, please? Thank you. And then I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Great, that carries. Thank you. So with that, I believe then we are going to go to planning and development. The Integrity Commissioner report precedes it. Okay, so maybe Ms. Preston, you can speak to that?
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So as council is aware, under the Municipal Act, the municipality is required to establish a relationship with an integrity commissioner as prescribed under the Act, and they provide training, a variety of functions, as well as act as an investigator capacity for codes of conduct complaint or other variety of policy investigations that may happen by members of council or their committees. Our agreement with our current integrity commissioner, Mr. Fleming, is come due. It has been a 5-year arrangement thus far with Mr. Fleming. It has been a great relationship. He is the integrity commissioner for most notably all of our neighbors, as well as the counties, and a number of other municipalities across Eastern Ontario. It is staff's recommendation to renew the agreement. I believe that I received some correspondence earlier today that perhaps council would entertain an alternate term of 2 years so that the next council, with our election coming up in 2026, might make the decision as to whom their integrity commissioner would be for that new term as they come into office. So I'd happily entertain that amendment to the agreement this evening, should council wish, or any other further amendments.
Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. I agree. We've been very well served by Tony Fleming as our Integrity Commissioner, but I think with the election coming, we want to tie the hands of the next council coming in to a long term, a 5-year term, which is considerably long. So my amendment to the existing motion would be to change that term from 5 to 2 years.
Good. Any other comments or questions in regards to this? Okay, I think it's been well articulated. So with that in mind, I'll look for a mover and a seconder for the amendment or for the adoption of the terms, Ms. Preston? The adoption of the terms or the amended terms?
So with council's approval, I would note that we would pass bylaw 7324 with the amendment to the term from 5 years to 2 years, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of the agreement with the revised provisions for the Integrity Commissioner Services.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And Councilor Sullivan, will you second that? Thank you. All right, I'm just trying to be fair and going from left to right. Oh, go ahead. You can ask your question. I'm
sorry. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to clarify, if the current agreement expires in August and we renew for 2 years, that is still going to be prior to the election. So I think we need to stretch that out so that, because the next council, whoever makes it up, would not be able to make a decision until probably January. So,
good catch.
Through you, thank you, Councillor Sullivan. That's a very good point. We could extend it for a term of perhaps 30 months, and that would give the time to go into 2027. Of course, the terms could be negotiated prior to and that could give council time should they wish to explore other options prior to the end of the term.
okay, then I would maybe a friendly amendment to the amended that we make it for 30 months. And I will second that.
Yeah, no, I'd consider that a friendly amendment. So.
Excellent. Okay, so the motion has been moved and seconded. It has been amended twice. Thank you for that catch, Councillor Sullivan. And I'm going to call the vote. All in favor, please. Excellent. Thank you very much. Next, we have nothing on the agenda this evening for client services, corporate services, Emergency and Protective Services, but thank Deputy Chief for being here this evening with us. And we'll go straight to Planning and Development. And I understand we have a noise exemption report. I'm going to put this down because I can't see anybody. There you go. And who is giving us that report? Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm providing this presentation on behalf of our Manager of Bylaw Services, who sends his regrets this evening that he could not be here. So if we go to the next slide. So the municipality received a noise exemption in relation to a live concert. The concert will be held at 1101 Kennedy Road, which was, the original intent was to have the property, have the event on the northern part of the property that comes in off County Road 43, but we did receive a request to amend the site plan and location on the property very recently. The noise exemptions that are being sought are on 3 dates. The first 2 leading up to the event on the Sunday. So the Friday, they're seeking a noise exemption from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. to allow for sound checks. On the Saturday, from noon to 11 p.m. for sound checks, and then the event itself will be held from noon to 9 p.m. They're anticipating approximately 10,000 attendees to the event. Next slide, please. So the property is dual zone. So the front portion on the north that fronts onto County Road 43 does have a tourist commercial exception zone. And the rural, the portion on the south side closer to Kennedy Road is zoned rural. I do note that this is an activity happening on the property, so the zoning isn't applicable. The property is 58 acres in size. There are several residential dwellings and a hotel in proximity of the event. The noise bylaw requires that notification be provided to neighboring property owners 10 days in advance of this council meeting, and notice was sent to owners on August 18th. We did receive one response to the notice that was sent out. Here's the proposed location. So you can see Kennedy Road is just to the south at the bottom of the screen. The event area where the concert will be held is in the yellow area. So there will be a trail path that is carved out for the attendees to walk into that event area. It is intended that the parking for the event would be held up in the cleared area just on the north side of Kennedy Road. I will note that this is a private event, and the applicant for the noise exemption and the individual who's organizing the music festival did go through our FSEAT process. Our FSEAT process is typically for events held on municipal land, but we felt that due to the size of the event, the municipality needed some additional information. So they did meet with the municipality to provide us with their proposal as to how the event will be organized and operated on the site. And I believe the next slide is for questions. Thank you.
Great. So first I'm going to go to council colleagues. Council colleagues, any questions about the presentation? So Councillor Wilson and then Deputy Mayor.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Director Martin. This question isn't really directed towards the noise exemption, but originally when this came, I've only seen it just briefly recently that this event was even taking place. Traffic was going to enter off of 43, and they've changed that to now Kennedy Road. How many cars do we expect to be going in and out on Kennedy Road? I'm taken aback because I think there's an extreme amount of cars coming and going on Kennedy Road, and I'm sorry, I'm speaking for the residents. I think they would be upset.
Through your worship to Councillor Wilson, I don't have an exact number on the number of cars that are anticipated. What I can say is that they do plan on using buses to shuttle individuals to the site, but there will also be car traffic. The route for which the vehicles will travel will be from County Road 43 down County Road 22 onto Kennedy Road. So that's the route that's going to be assigned, and individuals encouraged to keep traffic off of Town Line and coming through that way. And then the parking would be on site. I don't have an exact number of vehicles at this time, but I do note that they have established a route. We've also advised that there is a requirement for no parking signs on both sides of Kennedy Road, as though no parking will be permitted on the street during the event. and that there would have to be traffic control measures as well. So I believe they're working with the OPP as well, and they've reached out to the counties to see if there can be additional measures put in place to help direct and keep traffic flowing within the area.
Thank you for that. I have one more question. Is this a licensed event where alcohol is being served?
Through your worship, I do not believe so.
Okay, thank you.
It is not a licensed event. Okay, excellent. And I understand the applicant is here, is that correct? Have I been correctly informed? Who is the applicant? Gotcha, okay. So we'll just see where we get in terms of council questions, and if required, we can certainly invite you down. Anything else, colleagues? Okay, so I have a Deputy Mayor and Councillor Sullivan, and then I'll put myself on the list. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Director Martin. I understand that the event is actually taking place on the Sunday, but they're looking for an exemption for the 2 days previous to set up. But that it's a noise exemption, so it seems a little excessive, in my opinion, that they've got 17 hours worth of sound checks. Is there a rationale why they wanted that exemption to cover all of those 2 days of setup?
Through your worship to the Deputy Mayor, I would have to defer that question to the event organizer as to the logistics of the sound checks and the timing for doing so.
Okay,
Can I
great.
follow up, just a follow-up question? Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, to Director Martin. Through the FC application process, did they say when they were setting up? Or it's private property, so they can come and go as they like, but was there any indication when they would be setting up stages or barricades or seating or stuff like that?
Through your worship, again, I would want to refer back to the organizer of the event. My understanding is that setup would occur the days leading up to when they're doing the sound checks or they're bringing the staging equipment. They're also building an access road in as well to allow for the staging vehicles to access the property, as well as establishing, an efficient path for emergency service as well to access the site. I do not believe it's seating. There's seating anticipated at this event on a large scale. I think it's mostly a large outdoor music concert where individuals will be standing.
Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Director Martin. How far down Kennedy Road is this? I'm just not sure how far off of County Road 22 it is, or sorry, Kennedy Road. How far off of 22 does this traffic have to go? And there was second parking site off-site, is that correct, with shuttle buses? No? Yeah. Which will reduce the number of cars that have to go there, correct?
So there are a minimum of 2 shuttles working or multiple shuttles using more than one drop-off location?
Oh, yeah. County Road 43, Tomlinson.
Yeah.
Okay. The applicant is here, so council colleagues, if you wish, we can invite the applicant to speak to some of the logistics of the event, if that's helpful. Are you prepared to do that? Does that make sense? Would you be able to provide just some additional context? Okay, come on down. Thank you. Welcome. And again, I just would remind colleagues, our jurisdiction is over noise. So this is a private event held on an extremely large piece of property. 57 acres is not insignificant, and it appears that there will be significant tree buffering around the entire event venue. So we appreciate your indulgence and understand that your application is specific to noise. But obviously, given the size, there's some curiosity about other aspects of you bringing such a large gathering together. I would like to remind colleagues, however, that Kenfo Live does something similar over the summer, and it's a very smooth operation. And of course, many will recall the International Plowing Match, which on one day saw about 10,000 people come into the Kemptville campus area as well. So welcome, and I'm so sorry, we don't have your name, so if you wouldn't mind telling us your name.
Sure, my name is Isaac.
Okay, thank you, welcome.
Thank you.
Isaac, would you be able to just speak to a couple of questions in regards to why 3 days of noise exemptions? We understand it's just a one-day event, is that correct?
It is a one-day event, yes, that's right. So leading up to the event, we will have artists coming in who have requested
Right.
an allotted amount of time for sound checks, just to ensure that, you know, on the day of the event, everything is in order. So we have about 6 artists coming in, and they have, at the minimum, requested about an hour and a half each. So we've asked for this amount of time to be able to set up and to make sure that we have everything in place so that we can accommodate for that, and that we are well prepared for the event, and bring the community. And so when the community comes together, you know, everything is well sorted and everything is well arranged.
Okay, excellent. And I just thinking of the Kemptville a live music festival, probably a similar exemption might be granted, or is it because of where this event is taking place that the noise exemption is being requested? Ms. Martin? Do we grant similar noise exemptions to Kemptville Live Music Festival?
I believe you do, yes, your worship.
Okay, and that would be over multiple days as well. However, they have multiple days of and evenings of music.
That is correct.
Okay, so not dissimilar to other large-scale events in the community. In terms of parking and obviously accommodating a large number of vehicles and understanding that this is really about noise more than anything else, but just to perhaps help us understand, are you fairly confident that the shuttles that you're running and the drop-off and parking areas will be sufficient, given the numbers?
Yeah, we're very confident in that. We've spoken with Tomlinson, who have provided us graciously with some parking space. The ground itself has more than enough sufficient space for the cars that we expect, which should probably be around the 200, 300 number. Anything more than that will be able to park at the Tomlinson space and will be shuttled in.
Okay. And you're running shuttles for the duration of that one day, is that the case?
Yes, we're running shuttles, yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
And of course, we understand that this event has happened previously in other venues in the Ottawa area, is that?
That's correct, yes. Last year, we did have this event at the RCGT Stadium in Ottawa, and it went over very, very smoothly. It was something that was a great impact to the community, and that was a really positive thing that people were able to really get together on and come together on. And that's the ethos of who we are as an organization. That is what we hope to present and what we hope to bring.
Great. And do you have any partnerships with the local community in terms of how you're convening things going forward?
Yes, we do. We have brought in many of the local community in terms of businesses for our vendors to be able to, you know, be part of the event, because we think that bringing the community together does involve the people who are in the community. So we do have that.
Okay, great. Colleagues, any other questions? And again, we appreciate your indulgence, sir, just given the fact that you're here for a noise exemption, but obviously lots of curiosity
Yes,
about such a large
No worry.
event. All right. Deputy Mayor?
Yep, thank you, Madam Mayor, through you to Isaac. This is a noise exemption question. 6 artists times 1.5 hours, 9 hours, I understand that you probably have to have more time exempted just in case they don't behave and show up at the right time. But the Saturday, you're looking for 10 hours worth of noise exemption.
Right.
But you also have a Friday with an additional 7 hours. Are they spread out over those 2 days? Are there going to be hours where nobody's going to be doing sound checks, or is it going to be continuous for both days? What's the schedule?
Thank you very much for that question. So over those 2 days, from the Friday, we'll be having the stage coming in. and the trucks on the stage will have alarm bells on them as they back up and things like that. So they may get to a certain decibel that may disturb or may make a sound within the community. So we want to make sure that's covered. We'll have heavy equipment coming in as well to bring in, some of the ballasts, some of the engines, some of the generators, things like that. So between those 2 days, we'll have all of that. Obviously, the setup of the stage, which will take some time. We also want to make sure that we're being considerate about that. And then obviously, coming forward towards the Saturday, we'll have sound checks and things like that. And so we just want to be very considerate about all of that and make sure that we are going through the right channels and we have the right approvals.
Other questions, colleagues? Councillor Sullivan, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you to Isaac. It's a big undertaking that you're going for here, so I commend you for, obviously, you've done it before and you're thinking of all sorts of things, equipment, sound, noise, etc. Is there any camping on the site? Any people who would be staying there and camping on the site? Or would that but just be, workers who are involved in the setup, etc.?
So it is a one-day event. There will be no festival goers staying overnight.
Okay,
Anybody who needs to work later into the night will be of the official crew for setup.
okay.
And security. We'll have security on site to make sure that everything is in order.
Okay, thank you. And so related to the noise exemption, do you think the sound checks would have to go as late as 11 o'clock at night?
It's hard to say, if I'm being honest with you.
But you're kind of covering the whole gamut.
Exactly. We want to be respectful to the community. So we don't want to say, for example, we want the sound exemption to end by 8 and then it goes further past that, right? But we do think, and based off our event last year, things do go awry sometimes. Artists are late, or setup takes a little bit longer, or something needs replacing, right? And all this is needed to be taken into factor for the exemption that we've requested for.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, colleagues? Okay, Councillor Wilson, did you have anything to add? Okay, I understand there's a number of people that have come here tonight. Does anyone wish to speak at the mic about their concerns in regards to noise? Or have most of those questions been answered? Okay, so if you wish to come down, this would be your time. And then we're moving on to the next agenda item. So if somebody wishes to take advantage of the fact that Isaac is with us and would like to articulate their concerns, maybe Isaac, you can just move back so we can invite
Certainly.
members, but if you could stick close to the mic because we'll invite you up to respond. Thank you. And we appreciate, again, your willingness to share information. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if we could just have your name for the record, please.
It's Tonakila Gordon. This is not my forte, public speaking. In fact, I'm terrified. But I feel that I need to be heard in this matter. I've done my best to keep it as short as possible. I didn't quite meet the 5-minute mark, but I can assure you I can wrap it up somewhere around 6.5, as long as I don't get too nervous. Okay. At some point this summer, on Google Maps, I noticed a new marker, Ottawa Festival Ground. It piqued my curiosity as to what was coming next. I was aware that 4032 County Road was zoned C7-3 Tourist Commercial. A while later, I saw the municipality advertising for John Festival on their official website. I drove by County Road 4032 regularly, anticipating seeing some changes. People getting ready, removing the unsightly rubble and garbage, the grounds being cleaned up, parking lots being prepared, signage, and in general, setting up the infrastructure for a major festival. On August 15th, while traveling along Kennedy Road, I observed a significant presence of heavy equipment in the field located at 1101 Kennedy Road. This occurrence piqued my curiosity, especially considering my prior knowledge of the upcoming event on the other side of the property. During the following week, on August 25th, volunteers affiliated with John Festival appeared at a residence bearing floral arrangements. They informed us that they possessed a special event permit and that their intention was to relocate the entire festival, accommodating as many as 10,000 attendees, to an alternative site on the property and that is actually zoned RUL. They shared with us the intent to redirect all the traffic from the main commercial entrance and exclusively direct all traffic down Kennedy Road. At this time, I believed they were incorrect, since organizing major events with such magnitude necessitates meticulous planning and extensive protocols clearly outlined in the festival and special event policy by Leeds and Grenville, including sound management plan, traffic management plan, waste management plan, site plan, emergency plan, parking plan, etc. On August 26th, we were in receipt of a notice dated August 16th via the mail from NG Bylaw Department seeking an exemption for noise for the Ottawa Festival Fairground located at 4032 County Road. I felt reassured that the young volunteers must have misspoke and forecasted what their ideal solution would be: to simply move a major event in its entirety in less than 30 days to the middle of an old-growth cedar bush in a hayfield with complete disregard for all detailed dates and deadlines, expectations set out in the North Grenville Festival and Event Policy. During my honeymoon, I was shocked to find out a hand-delivered but rubber-stamped revised application dated August 28th, which fails to provide the 10 days notice required under Section 5.3A of the Corporation of the Municipality North Grenville Bylaw. The notice originally received aligns with the documentation provided by North Grenville Bylaw, the exemption application, pages 1 and 2, a signed complete application by Diala Samaras. This also aligned with the presentation that I printed at 10:30 this morning, which still indicated that the event was occurring on the other side of the property. As far as I know, as of today's date, there has not been a new application filed with a map of the new revised location submitted in accordance with 529 by Diala or an agent acting on her behalf. My question is, who unilaterally changed the location of the event prior to receiving a new application signed by the landowner or anybody representing them? The new application will fail to adhere to Section 5.1 of the municipal bylaws of notification to them within 30 days. This notice, endorsed by staff, requires substantial 17-hour sound check to be considered 2 days before the commencement of the concert. I've been going to Kemptville Live Community Festival for 7 years. Using the same rationale and calculations for time required for the soundtrack, for 5 bands being 17 hours, it would indicate that the Kemptville Live Music Festival would need 65 hours or more of soundtrack the week prior to even beginning the festival. I strongly believe this is completely unjustified and shows the organization's lack of consideration and flies in the face of Section 2.33, Sound Management Plan, SMP, shall mean a plan intended to minimize the disruption of neighborhood properties due to excessive loud noise being generated by a special event. I 100% do not support 17 hours of sound checks. I do not support a revised especially when I feel that the intent is to negate the responsibilities of the organizers for the safety requirements set out in the festival special event policies during an event, which include, but are not limited to, fire safety, travel, what I had mentioned before. I would ask council and staff to consider examining the scenario from the perspective of a customer renting an Airbnb property. Occasionally, the accommodations booked online may not meet the expectations upon arrival. I empathize with the organizers arriving to an underdeveloped Ottawa Festival grounds to find zero infrastructure for a major commercial event, hoping to host 10,000 people. I want to emphasize to the John Festival attendees and the performers that I fully support their mission and the wonderful vision they have for a musical festival in our community, as it was described and the location where it was planned to take place in the meeting on July 8th. I believe the property owner and the event organizer oversold and underdelivered, but this should not be downloaded onto the residents of Kennedy Road. The noise bylaw is the least of our problems on Kennedy Road as of today. We need to be concerned with all safety. If the intent of the FSEAT is to simply rubber stamp all requirements and deadlines sent out within the policy, then they might as well rip it up and throw it in the garbage. The unprecedented haste in which FSAT is bending to the property owner's failure to provide adequate space in the Section C7 zoning to this major event is alarming. The last-minute pivot, perhaps driven by well-intended desire to save the John Festival, is not an opportunity to download chaos onto the residents of Kennedy Road. Doing so is in direct conflict with the North Grenville Festival and special event policy and Ontario federal laws, including emergency response, fire safety prevention. Accessible for people with disabilities are not covered. At its best, it can be seen as misinformed. At its worst, it presents an opportunity for severe neglect and potential resulting in fatalities. I need to be reassured by this council that the location has now been subject to all requirements set out by the festival special event policies. I would like to see the following updated information set out by them. Section 2.33, Sound Management Plan, Section 3.4, Traffic Management Plan, Section 3.5, Waste Management Plan, Section 2.5, Site, Emergency Plan, Parking, Road Closures, Sound Management, and Traffic. All of these things needed to be submitted within a timely manner so something of this magnitude can take place. You can't simply stamp revised on one aspect of the bylaw and throw everything in here out the window because they rented the wrong space. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks, and perhaps we can have Ms. Martin clarify the FSEAT process doesn't apply as... Yes, go ahead, Ms. Dunlop.
Ah, there we go. Is this the old give it a kick and it works? Okay. So the FSEAT process and the process for which the John Festival came to the municipality, Madam Mayor, the location is on private property, so it is actually exempt from the FSEAT process, but we did ask them to satisfy some of the requirements. With the magnitude of the proposed event, we had emergency management services, we had the OPP, the health unit, et cetera, review the original application in regards to traffic management, in regards to health and safety requirements, vendor requirements, et cetera. So although they were exempt from the FSEAT process, we were concerned for a lot of the same items that we would be concerned with if the event was on municipal or public lands. A lot of the items were satisfied in regards to the County Road 43 in regarding extra OPP presence for traffic control, additional signage in regards to no parking, as well as the shuttle service, because the traffic was one of our major concerns. Access still has to be satisfied to the fire department's satisfaction, of which the John Festival at this point in time have indicated compliance. But as I said, the FSEAT process is for public lands. We do have applications, but not everything as it would be from a public process.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else? Is there anyone else who wishes to speak prior to our deliberation? Okay, come on down. Is there anyone else? Okay. Okay. Just keeping an eye on the time. So I see 2 or 3 additional speakers. Is that correct? Okay. Great. So if we can try to limit comments to 5 minutes, that'll allow us to hear from others. And if you could just state your name, please.
My name is Gary Lawler. I reside at 902 Kennedy Road. So I appreciate the opportunity that Isaac and his team are bringing to the community. I think it's a fantastic opportunity. I have some particular issues with regards to safety concerns and stuff, and I appreciate that it's a privately owned property. However, any accessibility to that private property is public land, right? I think we're sort of skirting around that particular issue. To answer the council member's question earlier, the designated spot in general is at the far end from the entrance point of Kennedy Road, so it's 3/4 the way down closer to Town Line. It's maybe 400 meters up from Town Line, or if you're, the other side of it's about 800 yards, roughly. So that remainder of Kennedy Road, all 3.5 kilometers, will be heavy traffic. There's a lot of children, young families in that area, not a large community, but there's some young children. There's no walking space. If 2 cars passed abreast, there is no shoulder to walk on. So if anybody's walking on that road through light traffic, a vehicle has to stop to make allowance for another vehicle to pass for the pedestrian to be safe. That is a significant concern. We're fundamentally, with the heavy traffic and the large machinery and others, we're looking at a loss of access to any mobility on that road, in or out. Personally, myself, I have family members that have health concerns that may or may not, should an emergency arise, require immediacy of transport. That's going to be a significant impact. I'm sure I'm not the only person. I know of other members in the community that have other health issues and concerns. So the question there is, what's being done to mitigate that? And so I did some rough math. 10,000 people at 5 persons per vehicle occupancy. That's in excess of 2,000 cars. On-site parking for 200. Are we thinking Tomlinson is going to give us room for another 1,800 vehicles? I don't see that happening. Realistically, what we can say is, if experience has shown anything, even if there is parking provided, there will be use of any available parking spaces, with or without, no parking signs, which means we now have the added requirement of, towing, police safety enforcement, and other breaches. I don't know that it's been well planned. I'm not sure what capacity this council has to provide an alternate venue. We've talked about the grounds available on public land here or municipal-owned properties at Kempville campus. Is that an option? Have we considered that as an alternate option, given the accessibility requirements to bring this lovely venue to our community, which I think would be beneficial? It has a lot of accessibility points that are not so choked or constrained. It's closer to the hospital, should emergencies arise. It's closer to fire services, should they be required. And it's closer to policing services, should they need to be called. So these are just some quick thoughts in my mind as I was planning logistically in my head. So I would make that proposal to council to consider before they ratify the noise bylaw, I guess, because realistically, those trucks are going to be allowed coming up and down those roads regardless. Not just the venue, it's the entire length of the road we're talking about. It's not on site. Right, so every vehicle that passes in front of my house, a large transport truck, machinery, and other, it's noise. And it's not just noise on site, it's noise as they transit in and out, right? So you're not asking for exclusion just for 43 or for the Kennedy site. You're asking for the exclusion for the entirety of Kennedy, which we haven't talked about. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
So maybe we can accept other members of the public who wish to speak before asking Ms. Martin or Ms. Dunlop to respond. Sure, welcome. Just your names for the public record, thank you.
I'm John Bozewell, this is
Yes.
Leslie Hamilton.
Welcome. Hi
And,
there.
thank you, Mayor Peckford and councilors. This
For
is
taking our
quite an
comments.
honor, and this is pretty scary. Okay.
Don't be scared. No
so we
need.
we live on Kennedy Road, okay, and we like it there. And truthfully, we're really surprised, okay, when for the last week and a half, we've had all this heavy equipment next door to our place, chopping down trees. Looks like they're making a big parking lot, but all kinds of stuff going on, okay? And our understanding was that this concert, and we were fine with the concert when it was down on Highway 43. It looked like a great place for it. You even have hydro poles in there, right? It used to be a driving range, I think. But it was fine by us because that's the area where there's generally noise on the highway and things like that. And we quite like where we are. You know, we might hear it in the distance, but it's a nice, quiet community, you know, and we like it the way it is. So when all this stuff started to change, okay, then we were quite surprised, okay? And I thought, this doesn't make a lot of sense, you know, it doesn't, is there not some kind of approval process that needs to go on at the municipal level to cover this kind of stuff. I really didn't understand, you know, and so, TK, that was an excellent presentation. God, I didn't know all those laws existed, but for us, I think the big thing is it's going to kind of change the way things are. Right now, that venue, okay, that property is being, I think it's being billed as the Ottawa Festival Field, okay, and they actually have an events page, and this is the event on that page, and my guess is if this is how it's being sent now, there'll be lots more of these same things going on. And I don't know about your laws and what you can do, but I think what I saw from the zoning laws was that the strip of land along Kennedy Road was already zoned rural residential, and I thought that would protect the entrance going in from the back end of the property. But it sounds like that's not what's happening here. So all we know is we'd like to protect our nice quiet neighborhood, okay, our nice quiet road, okay. This idea of 10,000 cars coming in on a day, that's nuts. When this thing was first set up, there was 3,500 was the estimated number of attendees, right? No, that's not bad, but today we're talking 10,000, and we're talking narrow little road, Kennedy Road, with no stripes painted on it, you know. Anyways, that's kind of where we're coming from, you know, and it's just, I think it will affect the quality of our lives, okay? And we like it where we are, and I don't know what can be done, but we hope that something can be done, okay? Again, that coming in off Highway 43 wouldn't bother me a bit, you know, because that land's been sitting there for a while. It'd be nice if somebody could use it and have some enjoyment out of it, but up on Kennedy Road, it makes no sense to me at all. So, anyways. And thank you for your time.
I just have one question. It's regarding electricity. Maybe you can, there right now isn't any electricity coming in off of Kennedy Road. When we talk about noise, one of my concerns is generators, the amount of generators that you will require in order to run the operations. Like I've looked at some of your entertainers, and it's like, wow. But it's going to be a lot of required electricity. So are you planning on having generators sitting on site running all the time? Oh, can I ask? Sorry.
So why don't you complete, if you're at the end of your
Yeah, that was it.
And there was one other
intervention,
question. A lady
right.
said she wanted to know whether there were going to be fireworks back in the woods there.
Okay,
Okay?
perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
And thanks a lot.
Okay.
Good stuff.
So before we ask our staff, of course, council has not been directly involved in the internal planning or mitigation of much of the impacts of this event. So we're learning alongside you. So I believe, is there one last speaker before we ask staff to respond? Okay. You do have to present from the mic, I'm sorry. Okay. And we just do need your name. Thank you. And just the last name? Sure. Thank you. Welcome, Mackenzie.
I just have a quick question. In the presentation, Amy mentioned something about it being an activity, so it's exempt. Is that all activities on rural designation, and what qualifies as an activity? Just personal knowledge.
For sure. Thank you. That's a great question. We appreciate it. So I guess I'm a little bit trying to figure out what the best way to proceed would be. Ms. Martin, do you want to speak to the particulars of the event or where at this stage the municipality is able to influence or mitigate certain traffic impacts, which appear to be something of concern to many of the individuals who have spoken?
Thank you, Your Worship. And in regards to the activity and in regards to zoning, the activity is happening over one day, being the concert itself. If the individual was looking to set up a concert venue on a regular basis, then we put some consideration to zoning. It's similar to Kemptville Live and how we treat it. We don't provide site-specific zoning for Kemptville Live. We didn't provide site-specific zoning for the IPM or other municipal events or other events that were happening of a similar nature. It's just limited to an activity that's happening on the private property.
And again, it's for the record, I have to restate your question because, and then we'll come down and you can repeat your question. But then unfortunately, we can't accept interventions from up there because they're not captured on the public record and these are public meetings. So if you could just ask any question you have right now,
Okay.
and then we'll try to get staff to answer it.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, just so any one-day activity, or in this case, it's 3 days, anything that's over the course of one weekend is exempt from rural designation policy for like activities?
So staff's interpretation of it is that the activity itself is, even though it's happening over, the setup's happening over 2 days and the event itself is isolated to 1 day, it's a one-off activity that's happening on the property. It's not a persistent use that's being established. No different than Kempville Live happening. It happens over a series of days. Setup happens leading up to the week before. The IPM, it's similar in nature, right? It's not like a persistent activity that's happening on the property, and it's in relation to the duration and the time frame.
And then there's no like, oh, because this is a event center designated by the person who's running it, you're not being like, oh, they're gonna probably run more events like this?
Through your worship, so staff's understanding at this time is just this one event happening on this one weekend. If there's future consideration for establishing a continual use of this, we'd have further conversation with the property owner as to how do we address that. But no different than, like I said, Kempville Live or the IPM and how we treat this.
And the fact that they have a website and a business called the Ottawa Festival Center with that designation, would that indicate that they're planning on doing it again?
Again, I don't think we can speculate. I think we've received, obviously, an application around a noise exemption particular to this one event. So I believe that I'm not sure that we can go much further in terms of anticipating whether or not it would happen again. So at this stage, I'm just wondering, Ms. Dunlop, if we should take a short break so we fully understand how we can best answer these questions. Maybe that's the most helpful way to proceed.
Certainly, Your Worship.
Okay, so let's just take 5 minutes so staff can regroup. reconvene because we do have some other items, and we appreciate certainly hearing from members of the public who came to articulate some concerns this evening. That being said, I've been reminded by the clerk that council's consideration this evening is strictly around the exemption to the noise bylaw. And while it is important that residents have an opportunity to flag their concerns, this event is not subject to the FSEAT process. The identification of the lands for this particular one-day event are really at the exclusive purview of the convener and the property owner. So, however, that being said, we do want to provide a little more information through our CAO, who's been overseeing staff who've been engaging with the event organizers, and those event organizers have voluntarily agreed to adhere to, or at least provide as much information as possible under what we would consider an FSEAT process for an event held on public lands. But Karen, I'm going to ask you in your capacity as CAO to provide some additional context, but really I'd like to invite my council colleagues to overall, once we are able to share this information and get a little more from Isaac, I'd love to know your last name so I can properly address you. Gimba? Mr. Gimba, then we can go back to the question at hand. So, Ms. Dunlop, if you could just shed a little more light on where we're at.
Certainly, and thank you, Your Worship. So as Madam Mayor has stated, the FSEAT process is for public events. Although it is for public events on public lands, the John Festival did agree to participate and go through the majority of the FSEAT proponents, which has included 2 roundtable meetings. I didn't attend the second one. I was off for surgery, but the first one, we sat down with the OPP, we had the fire department, we had bylaw there, we had multiple agencies, including the health unit, as well as many departments within the organization. And a lot of the concerns that you have raised today were items that came up in conversation. This was the first meeting for the County Road 43 end of the property, which I understand, and Isaac, you can highlight the need for the change. There were land considerations in regards to topography, and as we all know in that section of the wood, because I live there too, it's wet. The process for emergency access, it was one of the considerations, as well as roadway access for both the population as well as the attendees for the event. So the majority of the people will come in by shuttle. The idea is that the on-site parking would be for, and Isaac, please correct me if I am wrong, is for accessible parking, as well as the workers, and I believe the artists will be the majority of the people using the land. All others are to be shuttled in. So that is our understanding of the event on lands of which the proponent, the applicant for the FSEAT, do not own the lands. They are, I believe, renting the lands for this specific event. So, Madam Mayor, that summarizes what I know at this point in time. If there's anything other than the noise issue which is on the agenda this evening, I'm sure Isaac or I can review the FSEAT application in front of me to answer any questions.
And again, could you just speak to the mandated OPP presence that I think was an outcome for actual police oversight, particularly of any potential traffic or road safety concerns?
Certainly. The OPP have been engaged as part of the FSEAT application, as well as on-road traffic control. The OPP are the only ones that can do the on-road traffic control, save and except, of course, road authorities. The applicant has 3 cruisers, I believe, was the inclusion within the application, as well as off-duty paid OPP officers, as well as private security, and I believe there's 10 to 16 of those, depending on the time of the day, the time of the event, and what's on site. There, again, will be no parking event signs at the proposed alternative location on the Kennedy Road end. I think that that's it from a traffic standpoint, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, great. So maybe then we'll ask Isaac to fill in any other details. Isaac, is there anything you wish to add, given what you've heard this evening? And again, I do appreciate your indulgence. We are here strictly as per the notice to deal with a noise exemption, and we've gone considerably outside of that just because we've had so many residents wanting to express their concerns, but we will have to refocus on that. But is there anything else you wish to add? And you'll have to, I'm so sorry, you do have to come up if you wish to. And it's Mr. Gimba, correct? Thank you. Oh.
Okay, there we go. It seems like we've all had some issues with this device. I do want to express my appreciation for the concern. It shows genuine care for the community, for the residents to come up, express their concern. Also their admiration for what is going on with the festival. I think one of the things that stood out to me that I do want to point out was the reason of why we changed locations. We changed locations because of natural causes, unfortunately. I think we've all realized this year we've had a little bit of a heavier downpour in terms of rain. That ground itself, it is graded in the sense that it starts on a hill on Kennedy Road and runs down all the way through to Highway 43. So unfortunately, we ended up finding ourselves in a bit of a swimming pool, which would have given us a lot of safety concerns, which we're very concerned about for the festival goers. Not only that, but obviously the equipment that would be coming in, it is heavy equipment. And so that's on the ground that we wanted to put that equipment on. And so we wanted to make sure that the community that's coming together would be kept very safe, and so that's why we moved it to the other side. Regarding the noise exemption, if there are any sort of questions that I could answer, I'd be more than happy to.
Great. So anything else, Council, on the noise exemption itself? Okay. Anything else for Mr. Gimba before we conclude this discussion? Ms. Dunlop, I'm assuming, depending on the outcome tonight, that some of the residents speaking, if they wish to get more information about the event, should it transpire, then they would be going through Mr. Gimba, or is there an appointed person that can speak to them about Mr. Gimba's willingness to go through some aspects of the FC process? Is there a point of contact?
I would suggest, Madam Mayor, that they go through the Planning and Building and Bylaw Department.
Okay.
So if they can direct through Amy Martin as well as Jeff Barabo.
Okay, who isn't here this evening? Okay, great. And Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Mr. Kimba. You've heard some of the residents express some concern about the heavy trucks traveling on Kennedy Road, and it is a fairly narrow road. Would I be right in assuming that that load-in would be completed by the end of day Friday, and that the rest of the weekend would be strictly setting up on site? And then, of course, there's the tear down afterwards. So most of that heavy traffic would be happening on the Friday, is that correct? Heavy truck traffic?
Yes, exactly. By end of day Friday, we hope to have everything on site. And so anything that would be happening in terms of traffic would be on the site itself, nothing, the road would be clear. That's a wonderful point. I do want to also just expand on that just very quickly. In terms of the traffic that will be there, there is a short time within which people will be arriving on the road, and then the festival will be taking place, so there will be no traffic on the road, on Kennedy Road. So there's probably about a 2-hour window, and then it should be a free road because there will be no parking. We'll have that observed. As you mentioned, OPP will be on there. We'll have security as well on there to make sure that that is adhered to, and then it would be also just at the end of the festival when people are exiting.
And your festival, if I understand it, runs from noon to 8 p.m.?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And it's an unlicensed event, is that correct?
It's unlicensed.
So that means there is no alcohol?
There is no alcohol. There's no alcohol, no drugs on site.
Okay. And your security obviously would be controlling for that?
That's right, yes. We've also spoken with the control department for smoking and vaping. And so we're in concert with them, and we're in advice with them to make sure that everything is safe, that, you know, there is no risk given the area that we're in.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then to your knowledge, once the event is over at 8 p.m., obviously it would just be the on-site workers that would stay longer, and everybody else would be exiting through shuttles or the accessible parking?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And again, no, that's it. I am now veering off myself. I'm now taking my own advice and the clerk's advice to stay on track with the noise exemption. So, council colleagues, any remaining questions? Okay. So then the recommendation currently is that council grants a noise exemption for the John Festival being held at 4032 County Road 43, North Grenville, for the following dates and times. Of course, I think, just a question to staff, we know the address has changed to Kennedy Road. I think there's some confusion about what the address of the event is. Are we considering the noise exemption for the address as characterized at 4032 County Road? Or is that address now something else?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the municipal address for the property itself is 4032 County Road 43. There's an additional civic at the rear of the property, but in our municipal system, it is 4032 County Road 43.
Okay. So then I'll continue reading the motion then. The council grants a noise exemption for the John Festival being held at 4032 County Road 43, North Grenville, for the following dates and times. Friday, September 20th from 5 to 11 p.m., Saturday, September 21st from noon to 11, and Sunday, September 22nd from noon to 9. So at this stage, council colleagues, I'll be looking for a mover and a seconder for the recommendations, if that's the appetite of council. Okay, so Deputy Mayor moves, Councillor Sullivan seconds. Is there any additional questions you wish to ask at this stage in regards to the noise exemption? I'm not seeing any, so I'm going to call the question. All in favor, please? Okay, that carries. Thank you for a robust discussion. Thank you, Mr. Gimba, and thank you to all the residents who've come out tonight with very legitimate concerns, and I do hope through the Planning and Bylaw Department, Ms. Martin, you can, and Mr. Mosher, of course, you can be available to residents for any additional developments around mitigation and, of course, road safety. We reduced the speed on Kennedy Road not that long ago in recognition of the fact that it is a residential road, and quite unfortunate that the obviously conditions didn't allow for County Road 43 entrance. I'm sure that would have been far more desirable for the event conveners as well, but we look forward to continuing to get updates from staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we're going to move on to K.7.2, and that's 4100 County Road 43, and it's the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw. This is a supplemental report. There was a public meeting earlier this year where we heard a lot, once again, lots of feedback from residents, and this is the subsequent report, which I understand follows significant engagement with staff, the proposed developer, and neighboring residents. So I believe, Ms. Martin, you're kicking this off?
That is correct, Your Worship. If we can just go to the next slide, please. Just so a reminder of just the background on the property, the zoning is currently mineral pit, rural exception 63, and environmental protection. It is designated currently as mineral aggregate resource, mineral pit, and provincially significant wetlands. The property in question that is being redesignated and rezoned is 42 hectares in size, approximately, and surrounding land uses include agriculture, residential, mineral extraction, industrial, and commercial. Next slide, please. There's a list of the studies that were submitted as part of the application. I do want to note that the traffic brief has been revised. The neighboring subdivision did form a resident group and provided their traffic analysis. So the revised traffic brief addressed the comments that came out of the traffic brief that was provided by the resident group. And I do note that these were provided within the report as an attachment and are available online. We also did receive the license surrender letters from the Ministry of Natural Resources, identifying that the property has officially surrendered the license and has met the rehabilitation requirements as per the ministry. This is just a reminder to council and the public as to the general location of the property. Next slide, please. And here is the property, just an aerial photograph, so you can see the existing water body, which was the area of the activity of the former pit. Next slide, please. So a planning analysis was provided back in April of last year. So I just want to speak to some of the matters that staff have been working with both the resident group and the property owner to address, which ultimately led to staff's recommendation in regards to the official plan amendment and in the zoning bylaw amendment. With the surrendering of the license, the original intent was to create a special policy area for the property. However, with the license being surrendered, staff are suggesting that a full redesignation of the property from mineral aggregate and mineral pit to rural be supported. So the official plan amendment that was provided, the draft in the council package, identifies just a straight designation change. There is no additional policy that's being created or requested at this time for the property itself within the official plan. Next slide, please. So the rezoning request would rezone a portion of the lands to permit a tourist commercial use on the property, and the tour commercial use would permit a motel hotel use as well as an assembly hall, which includes a banquet hall and a variety of additional tourist commercial uses that are listed in the C7 zone. Next slide, please. So staff have prepared a special exception zone for the property, and I'll get into a little more detail on some of the rationales to why we have restricted certain uses. So staff are recommending that a portion of the property be rezoned to the tourist commercial exception 6 zone to allow for the uses of the tourist commercial zone. However, notwithstanding the permitted uses of section 23.1, a tourist campground shall not be a permitted use. However, one travel trailer shall be permitted on the property for the purposes of accommodations. And that was at the request of the developer that be added in. I also want to note that staff are requesting an amendment, should council desire. It was requested within the planning rationale and request from the applicant, but was missed, and that is to add a subsection B under section 3A of the proposed draft bylaw that states, notwithstanding anything hereof to the contrary, on the land zone C7-6, the lands will be treated as one property for the purpose of zoning, lot area, lot frontage, and zone setbacks. So when it comes to the development of the lot, there is also a proposal to sever. The zoning treats it as one lot regardless of where that severance line may be created on the property. There's also a zone provision for open space, and that's to require a buffer area along the eastern property line with the neighboring subdivision. And so staff are recommending an open space exception 4 zone, which requires specific zone standards as it relates to a landscape buffer space. And it's also a provision that no structures or buildings would be permitted within this zone. And if we go to the next slide, I just provided the slide that was from the previous presentation. I do note that the area to be rezoned is not 7.6 hectares. That was the original in regards to the front piece, but it is 42 hectares in size. The zone standards are being met in regard to the proposed development of the site. Next slide, please. So here's the proposed site development that was presented to council back in April of this year. Next slide, please. So in regards to the aggregate licenses, as mentioned, the ministry has provided a letter to the municipality stating that the 2 licenses, being license number 4004 and license 20,050, have been surrendered and the rehabilitation has been completed on the sites. And again, as mentioned, these letters were included within the supplemental report. Next slide. So staff are recommending as part of the zoning bylaw amendment to require a 30-meter vegetative buffer adjacent to the building that would be converted to a banquet hall. An additional 12-meter buffer is proposed adjacent to the septic bed, and additional screening measures within the buffer area are also going to be considered as part of the site plan control application. A 10-meter buffer adjacent to the water body would be maintained as it currently exists. Next slide, please. So within the draft zoning bylaw amendment before council, there is a Schedule B which details that open space zoning. So it shows you that area where it would be reduced from where that 30 meters would start, which is adjacent to where the banquet hall is being proposed. Then it does go down to 12 meters adjacent to the septic, and then goes down to a further 10 meters as it goes along. Unfortunately, the aerial's not on, but that's where the water body would be. Next slide, please. So a noise assessment was not required as part of a complete submission for the zoning bylaw amendment or the official plan amendment. Staff will require a noise assessment as part of the site plan control application, with recommendations being implemented into the overall site development and site plan control agreement. Next slide, please. So the Maplestone Community Association did submit their own peer review of the traffic impact study, which was prepared by Castle Glen. The Castle Glen report identified the requirement for turning lanes. So Arcadis and IBI, which was retained by the property owner, prepared supplemental information in support of their opinion that turning lanes are not warranted by the proposed development. Based on additional information, the United Counties, who are the authority over County Road 43, their staff have indicated that vehicular traffic impact considerations as they pertain to the county road will be evaluated and addressed, if required, under the site plan approval process. The original traffic impact study, Castle Glen report, and supplemental from Arcadis are provided in the supplemental report. So the applicants also requested to have travel trailers, trailer campers, tent trailers, tents, or other transportable accommodations be permitted. Staff are not supportive of adding these specific uses on the property. No detailed site plan was provided that would indicate how these facilities would be accommodated on the property, and the hydrogeological study did not contemplate this additional use. We are recommending the request for one travel trailer for the purpose of accommodation on the property, and it is recognized that the trailer is already on the property itself, which is just located south of where the geodesic domes are located. Next slide, please. So staff have provided within the supplemental report the letters of objection that were received. Staff have corresponded with the resident group, including but not limited to an in-person meeting with staff on June 5th, an on-site meeting with the resident group representatives and the applicant, a meeting with the municipality's lawyer and the resident group's legal counsel to discuss regulation of water bodies. Staff have responded to multiple emails, and we've provided studies and peer review comments as requested. The Rideau Valley Conservation Authority noted no objection to the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment. Sewage system approvals, if necessary, are required prior to the issuance of any building permits. And it is staff's recommendation to council that council supports the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and official plan amendment for 4100 County Road 43. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Council colleagues, a lot to digest here, perhaps. So just opening it up to any questions you have at this stage. Okay, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you to Director Martin. So what's before us today is an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment. Site plan approval will be approved depending on a number of different conditions being met. Could you summarize very briefly those conditions that would have to be met in order for site plan to be approved?
Through your worship to the Deputy Mayor. So staff have identified that a noise assessment will be required at the site plan control stage. So we'll need to, that will be part of their complete application. Some of the comments that as the counties work through the traffic impact study, any conditions that relate to their requirements or their questions or concerns or their ask for revisions would need to be addressed. We cannot regulate landscaping under the Planning Act. That was changed. However, the applicant is willing to look at landscaping and buffering considerations as a way of mitigating potential impacts and concerns as identified by the resident group. The site plan itself, we take into consideration stormwater management, drainage and grading where required. I don't know if I missed any studies there. Photometrics, sorry. Photometrics as well, that is a requirement at site plan, as well as hydrogeology.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just for a follow-up question to Director Martin. I know it's very unlikely we're going to make everybody happy, but it would be useful to me, and I think the public, to know what accommodations or adjustments have been made as a result of Maplestone community objections? Where have we attempted to address some of their concerns? Thanks.
Through your worship to the Deputy Mayor, I will defer that matter to the Deputy Director. I just want to recognize Mr. Mosher's part in being a facilitator between the resident group and the applicant. So I'll defer to him on providing an answer on the back and forth.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you, Your Worship, the primary concessions, if you will, or accommodations have been to the vegetative buffer itself, and plus the acknowledgements that some additional studies will be required at the site plan stage. Those zone standards for the buffers are entrenched within the zoning bylaw, the amending zoning bylaw as proposed by staff.
All right. Anything else, Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, maybe you can clarify for me what, in terms of a buffer, I know there were certain, not obligations, but certain assurances made by the developer in terms of a buffer or a tree zone. Can you walk me through what has happened to that? Do they know, were they done? Are they still outstanding? What's the situation in terms of the developer's responsibility to buffer the properties that border this property?
Through you, Your Worship, if I could just request clarification, are you speaking about the 4100 County Road 43 property itself or the Maplestone
I'm
subdivision?
speaking of the subdivision, the Maplestone subdivision.
Okay.
When that was originally, I don't know what year it was, but certainly predates my time. What was part of the plan of the developer in terms of mitigating?
Thank you. So through you, Your Worship, part of that plan was the requirement that there be a 15-meter vegetative buffer on the west side of lots backing onto 4100 County Road 43. There were some securities placed into the subdivision agreement for that to be done. A very minimal amount, only $2,000. The municipality is still holding that money. We have offered that money, limited though it may be, to the resident group to say we could fund some planting. The release of the securities, because it's outside of the typical process, would have to be a specific request of council. And then if there was anything else that was being requested, that would be at council's discretion. So to date, we know that some residents have planted buffers on their properties. Not all have, as far as we know.
All right.
Just
Deputy Mayor, sorry, when I entertain
Yeah.
a follow-up, I just want to make sure I'm not losing anyone.
Yeah.
And I see Councillor O'Sullivan's hand, so we'll go there. So you have another follow-up.
Yeah, Ed, concerning the securities posted and the release of those securities, are you saying that it's up to council to direct staff to release those securities? The ones specifically for the $2,000 for buffer?
It would be a separate matter, separate to this one, but it would form part of a different discussion. And Madam Dunlop has her hand up.
If I may, Your Worship, the way the subdivision securities work, if there is a deficiency or remaining outstanding work, that subdivision has not been assumed into the municipal network of assets. So it remains an active development. The developer still has care and control over the subdivision itself. Should the $2,000 wish to be cashed for the specific subdivision, they weren't specifically, and please Director Finley correct me if I'm wrong, were not specifically identified for that specific strip, but they were for the subdivision as a whole. So $2,000 worth of tree planting for the subdivision as a whole. Should we want to consider taking that $2,000 and offering it out for some additional trees within the 15-meter vegetated buffer zone on the western boundaries of Maplestone, we would look into that as a separate issue. Maybe not from securities, maybe from some other fund.
Deputy Mayor, anything else?
Yeah,
Before I go to
sure.
Councillor O'Sullivan?
It would be great to hear the developer talk to why it's taken so long for him to conform to our standards so that we can assume the road and, release the securities. I'm curious why he wouldn't complete the subdivision.
Ms. Dunlop, can you speak to that?
Yes, if I may,
Yes.
Madam Mayor, the developer still has approximately 10 undeveloped lots within the subdivision. So there's still outstanding works that have to be completed, as well as engineering certifications. But the municipality has a hold on some of those lots until some of these other items have been brought forward and completed to engineering certification standards. We can push the developer to do that, but it is the developer's responsibility because they sell the lots. That's how they make their money. But we can push the envelope should be directed by council.
Okay, well, go to Councillor Sullivan. Happy to return to you, Deputy Mayor, but just want to give Councillor Sullivan a turn. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Sullivan, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to, I guess, Deputy Director Mosher. Was there also a requirement for fencing as well as the vegetative buffer that the developer was required to do along that western boundary? And was the fencing completed? That's one question.
Through you, Your Worship, yes, it was a requirement of the subdivision. Yes, it was completed.
Okay, thank you. So it's just the vegetative buffer that he did not complete, as well as there's 10 undeveloped lots. Now, I've done a site visit down there, and I also noticed that it seems like there's one foundation that may have been in place for a long time, looks kind of neglected. Is that something that can stay that way for an indefinite period of time? Because I'm sure it's something that the residents wouldn't be too happy about either. I know it doesn't relate to this, but that's a developer issue.
And I think, Ms. Dunlop, is that something you wish to answer? I certainly understand the want to see that the commitments made by the developer in the Maplestone subdivision are honored. And Ms. Dunlop, I'm wondering if perhaps a separate report can be brought to council, because it seems like there are some hanging chads, if you will, or is there a way to provide a opportunity for a more fulsome discussion of where things stand vis-a-vis that subdivision generally? Of course, in some cases, the concerns of Maplestone residents are pertinent to our discussion tonight. In other cases, they're not. What would be a way forward on this?
Thank you, Your Worship. The Public Works Engineering Department does keep a running tally of engineering certifications for all ongoing and active subdivisions. Yes, this matter is standalone to what the matter is this evening before us, and we can bring an operational report, information report back to council to highlight. I do wish to highlight one thing, though. The 15-meter no-touch zone vegetative buffer behind the houses on the western boundary of Maple Shore were not intended to be a treed 15-meter strip. They were intended to be a no-touch zone, similar to what is on 4100. Trees, of course, are a great sound attenuation, also a visual buffer. But the intent of that was a no-touch zone as a separation from the two properties, as well as for a rear drainage easement and small berm.
Go ahead, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you. So that no-touch zone, it's fine, though, if the residents choose to plant trees on that, they just cannot construct any buildings on that no-touch zone, is that?
The intent is no buildings, that is correct. If they wish to plant trees, do not interrupt any drainage patterns. They have been engineering certified.
Okay, thank you. So I think those are my questions then. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Just a couple from me. Of course, vegetative buffers are of great interest, I think, to council for all the reasons that have already been stated. I just wanted to just ask for a little more information, because we know in other areas where we, with the support of staff, have looked to prescribe a vegetative buffer. Sometimes it takes many years for that buffer or that vegetation to really grow. Have there been further stipulations in terms of what kind of vegetative, it's been a long day, vegetative buffer? Do we have any sense of whether or not, in that vegetative buffer, the developer would be planting more mature trees? Because clearly it does take years, many years, if not decades, for us, for some of those vegetative elements to do the job that's anticipated. So, Ms. Martin, are we able to direct the developer on a certain kind of vegetative buffer, or maybe one has already been envisioned? I would appreciate you shedding some light on that.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I do want to acknowledge that there is pre-existing trees within this area already. And it's our understanding that in conversation with the developer, which continues to be ongoing in regards to 4100 County Road 43, we're still working through those details as to any additional trees that they may want to plant. That would be more advised through a landscaping plan at the site plan stage, but there are ongoing conversations that we are having.
Indeed. So with that in mind, just using your report as my reference point, Schedule B of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment would impose an open space zone adjacent to the Maplestone subdivision. The proposed zone would implement a variable vegetative buffer as described below. So the proposed zone, so for consideration this evening are the details of vegetative buffers worked out in the site plan period, or is it pertinent to what you're asking us to approve this evening?
Thank you, Your Worship. That's more of a site plan detail than it is a zoning detail. The zoning establishes where the buffer area is to be established and establishes that no structures are permitted within that area.
So the details of the vegetative buffer are to follow once we're at site plan stage?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. The other thing I just wanted to ask is there seemed to be a considerable amount or some obviously different opinions, assessments of traffic volumes, right, in the area, to different engineering firms capturing different data, certainly not, I think, huge discrepancies, but notable discrepancies. I understand that it is the counties, and wearing my warden hat, I've seen the counties be heavily prescriptive of certain things when it comes to developments. There doesn't appear at this stage to be any comment from the counties other than a wait and see approach. Is that what I'm to understand when it comes to things like a possible turning lane? It is a busy road. I think we have to accept that. It's very busy. So certainly, I think we know that in some cases, a development can be a tipping point for an additional traffic or road measure. So I'm just curious to know from your perspective, do you expect the counties to engage more meaningfully in any traffic implications other than kind of we'll wait and see?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the counties did indicate that at this time they had no objection to the official plan amendment or the zoning bylaw amendment. And when I say counties, I mean the County Roads Department in review of the traffic impact study. In regard to the proposed use, but they referred their right to have further comment and provide further revision and work through that process as part of the site plan control.
So again, it is at the site plan control phase that any traffic mitigation measures would be identified. Am I understanding that right?
That is correct, Your Worship. And then those recommendations and the counties would also provide conditions to be added into a site plan control agreement that would be binding on the property and the property owner to develop. That's how that would be included. So they reserved their ability to provide further comment and to discuss this in more detail with the applicant at the site plan stage.
Okay, great. Just two more things that came to my attention as I was reviewing the report. I know that in the meeting that certainly residents had, I think, with yourself or Mr. Mosher and Ms. Dunlop, that meeting that residents had been asking for, they did seek to have the septic system potentially relocated, and they noted a berm construction. I just wanted to get a better understanding from you because I don't think either of those things are proposed, and I think it would just be helpful for us to understand how you came to the conclusion of not necessarily proposing either recommendation in regards to relocation of septic system or a berm construction.
Thank you for the question, Your Worship. So staff has not come to a conclusion that neither thing would be required. Regarding the septic system, it's legally permitted. It obtained a building permit. It met with all regulatory setbacks and is established in a location that is permitted.
I see.
So
Helpful.
it's allowed to be where it is. And then in terms of the berm, there was no study report or otherwise that identified a berm should be or would be constructed. I'm not an expert in berm construction itself, so I wouldn't be able to impose that that should be a requirement. So that's the answer.
Okay, so the location of septic systems on a particular property is largely the purview of whom?
We have an agreement with the Rideau Valley Septic Office. So under Part 8 of the Building Code, they review and issue permits for septic systems for us. So they are the issuer of those septic systems. So if you want to think about it, it's almost at arm's length. They do have to refer to zoning bylaws because sometimes those impose setbacks or other performance standards that have to be met by those systems. But largely, they look after the issuance of the permits.
Okay, thank you. It's helpful. I don't think I fully appreciated the nuance when it came to septic systems. Council colleagues, anything else? Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Deputy Director Mosher. A couple of times I've heard the term developer and the term applicant, and I think when you're talking developer, you're talking about the developer of Maplestone subdivision, and the applicant would be the owner of County Road 4100 property. So when you mentioned the developer taking responsibility for the vegetative buffer, I'm assuming then that you are referring to the developer of Maplestone subdivision, because it appears that there already are significant amount of trees on the applicant's property, 4100.
Through you, Your Worship, unless I've specified that it's the Maplestone subdivision I'm speaking about tonight, I've only been really speaking about 4100 itself when answering questions. So it's not that I'm using one term or another to refer to one side of the fence or the other side of the fence. So I've been that's why I asked for clarification on the Deputy Mayor's question to be explicit about what I'm talking about.
Okay.
I apologize for any confusion.
Okay. So the applicant of 4100 is taking some responsibility for additional vegetative buffer then? Is that correct?
Through Your Worship, on their property, yes.
On their property, that's, yeah. Because it seems visually to me that it has a lot of trees already. So just enhancing what's already there. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And great, thank you. Anything else from you, Deputy Mayor? Before we bring this discussion to a close?
I won't elaborate on this comment, but, you know, when I was talking about the developer, I meant the Maplestone developer. And it seems that he should have a vested interest in completing that development. I'm sorry he's not been able to sell the other lots, but that's his job. I think where is he in this picture? We have an applicant and we have the Maplestone community, but I think there's certain conditions that he hasn't fulfilled, and I'm just raising that as a question because it occurs to me that there's a third party missing from this conversation, but I don't know technically how they would be involved.
I think, again, Ms. Dunlap, you're going to provide some supplementary information in regards to the Maplestone status. So perhaps that question gets resolved at that time. Is that correct? Okay. So we look forward to that report because no doubt these two, by virtue of their proximity, are inextricably linked in some respects. My final question, Mr. Mosher, Ms. Martin, is obviously that meeting was held with residents and you captured the notes which you shared as part of this package, which I think was very helpful. And will there be any formal communication back, or was the intention of that meeting to receive comments and sort of capture what you heard in terms of concerns? Is tonight's meeting a response to those concerns in regards to, you know, your recommendations that you're wishing council to consider? So just wanting to know how that loop has been closed or not.
Through Your Worship, so there's been, at least on my count, 4 meetings that have occurred with members of the community association in some form or another. More than north of a dozen phone calls with specific individuals. So The information that's within the report, it's a bit of an exchange. It's a back and forth. So there's been the meeting. There were subsequent meetings to that. It outlined the sort of the first letter, the 9 issues, if you will, that the resident group brought forth, to which staff prepared a response, to which we received a response from residents. We have had follow-up conversations with at least Mr. Fox of the resident group following that, just to say that the matter was coming back tonight. In terms of ongoing communication, however this matter is decided by council, there would be notice of a decision that's given out to residents of the community.
Thank you. Great. And then finally, jurisdiction for the site plan. So I know that the province made considerable changes to the Planning Act. We can barely keep up. I know staff have been working so hard to adapt to the new planning framework, which is constantly evolving, as we all know. So remind me, where does the jurisdiction for the site plan rest? Because clearly some of the things you've identified here are germane to a site plan should the lands be rezoned.
Thank you, Your Worship. So under the changes of Bill 109, the province made it so that the signing of site plan agreements that's delegated down to the staff level. So it's no longer a matter that comes before council for a decision and direction that an agreement be entered into. However, staff can provide an update to council throughout the process as to where things are at, and prior to the signing of agreement, provide that information just for awareness.
And with that in mind, is there an opportunity to talk about the provisions of the site plan?
There's, thank you, Your Worship. There's no requirements under the Planning Act that we bring it back to the council table for council review and input and decision. But I just want to establish that the zoning bylaw in itself provides the requirements for where those vegetative buffer areas are, and staff have identified a series of requirements as a result of comments provided through the public process that the developer will have to submit, and we do have certain standards in regards to engineering that need to be met. So there are documents that they do have to adhere to that have been adopted by council formally at this table.
That being said, the devil is in the details, right? So sometimes, certainly, our accountability is certainly to all members of the public. So from our perspective, I think we would take great interest in the details of that site plan, because I think fundamentally, what's been at play here is how are we good neighbors to each other? And I think this community has been one that prides itself, I think, to the best of its ability to foster a spirit of good neighborliness. And it's with regret, actually, that I receive confirmation of something that I already knew, which is that council won't have an opportunity to actually work alongside you and Mr. Mosher to ensure that we have a level of confidence in the site plan. Of course, we have great respect for what you do and know that you work so hard to advance the policies and design guidelines and engineering guidelines, but it is regrettable that the province has taken that step away because it does allow us, I think, to further engage on the site plan process. But that being said, appreciate all of the pieces, all of the many hours and days and weeks that have gone into providing a very robust report this evening. So if there's nothing else, I'll ask for a mover and a seconder. Should it be the will of council that council approve and enact bylaw 7124 to amend the official plan to designate the lands at 4100 County Road 43 from mineral aggregate reserve and mineral aggregate pit to rural, and that council approve and enact bylaw 7224 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 5012 to rezone the lands at 4100 County Road 43 from rural exception 63, RU 63, and mineral extraction pit, MXP, to tourist commercial exception 6, C7-6, and open space, exception 4, OS4, to permit the establishment of tourist commercial uses with site-specific zone standards, as well as the insertion of section 3A of the bylaw. Is it 3B? I apologize. As well as the insertion of the section 3B of the bylaw, which states that notwithstanding anything hereof to the contrary, on the land zone C7-6, the lands will be treated as one property for the purposes of zoning lot area, lot frontage, and zone setbacks. So that is the motion. rather fulsome, colleagues, and I'm looking for a mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Wilson, thank you. So any last comments or questions? Not seeing any. All right. Well, once again, I want to thank all those who participated in the process, but this staff have certainly carried a heavy load on this one to navigate the complexities of this application. So I want to thank both of you for your efforts, Mr. Mosher and Ms. Martin. And I'll call the question. Oh, I'm so sorry, Councillor Sullivan. Of course. You are, the screen is hiding you, yeah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I intend to support this, and I just wanted to thank Mr. Mosher and Ms. Martin for all the hard work that they've done and all the diligence, and for the people of Maplestone who've been very understandably concerned about their properties. But as Deputy Mayor Barclay mentioned, I think that the developer of Maplestone needs to be involved in this, and in terms of finishing off the development of that subdivision. And they have beautiful homes in there, and obviously there's pride in their home. And I can appreciate their frustrations with the development not being completed and built out yet. So I think if there's any way that the developer can step up and finish it, that would probably be very helpful.
Great, thank you. Any other comments from council colleagues? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Director Martin, for mentioning the fact that the province has taken away or devolved site plan control approval down to staff, not to take anything away from staff, but I think it takes away a certain amount of local control over these developments, and that's a shame.
Indeed. That being said, I think I know that our staff will work diligently to ensure that the provisions of the site plan are upheld, and I look forward to getting more information as your conversations evolve. So if there are no other hands, I'm going to call the question. All in favor, please? Okay, that carries. Thank you very much. And we'll move on to the remaining items on the agenda. And of course, that will include no other business this evening, so I don't think we're addressing that. Notice of motions. There is one, and it is regards to the LaSalle Causeway closure. And Ms. Preston, perhaps you can speak to this at this stage, or would you prefer that I?
I just note that it has come in from neighboring colleagues and that you had wished for it to be on the agenda this evening. I'm happy to read it, should council wish, and we can entertain this. I know the evening has been long, so if we wish to read it and just consider it read this evening, we can always revisit it at another meeting should you wish, or we're happy to deal with it this evening as well.
So perhaps just for context, there is an effort in Eastern Ontario to appeal to the federal government in regards to the closure of a key bridge that is on a section of the LaSalle Causeway in Kingston. Unfortunately, the temporary bridge will limit boat traffic and has had a devastating impact on sort of the activities in the Rideau Canal in that area, and have reduced tourism and compromised not just Rideau Canal operations, but local economies that have been heavily dependent on boat traffic in the area. But with the temporary bridge that has been installed by the federal government, with the potential installation of this temporary fixed bridge, it is proving to have a very disruptive impact. So the interim bridge is intended to be temporary, but it now looks like it could be over 3 years for the section of the original bridge to be restored. All of this has meant that many, many mayors have been appealed to basically articulate their significant concern around the decision of the federal government to use a temporary fixed bridge structure, which has limited the activities in and around the Rideau Canal. So that is context for the recommendation. Do we need to read the recommendation, or can we assume it read? All of it is in front of council.
We should read it, Madam
Okay.
Mayor.
So I've done a lot of talking, so I'm going to invite you to read it. Thank you.
Absolutely, Madam Mayor.
Excellent.
Whereas Public Services and Procurement Canada reported damage and resulting closure of the Bascule Bridge, section of the LaSalle Causeway in Kingston in spring of 2024. And whereas the PSPC is planning to install a temporary fixed bridge in the former Bascule section of the LaSalle Causeway in Kingston until such time as a permanent bridge can be installed. Whereas the implementation of a fixed bridge is in direct contravention of the Canadian Navigable Waters Act, specifically the reform in 2018. Whereas the PSPC has announced a timeline of 2 to 3 plus years until the permanent structure will be finished. And whereas this closure has already had a devastating impact on the Rideau Canal vessel traffic, thereby reducing tourism in our communities and putting the future of not only the Rideau Canal operations, but our local economic health as a whole at risk. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of North Grenville hereby calls on the federal government to install a structure that will enable all marine traffic to pass through the LaSalle Causeway, commencing at the start of the 2025 Rideau Canal navigation season. And further, that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Minister of Transportation, Pablo Rodriguez, MP Mark Garriston, MPP Steve Clark, MP Scott Reed, PSPC representatives, and Parks Canada, Honourable Premier Doug Ford, and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
And all of that may change very quickly with the news of this evening that the federal government's or the Liberal government's status is tenuous with the withdrawal of the support of the NDP. So who's to say whether it's Prime Minister Trudeau? But for now it is, and certainly I'll be looking for a mover and a seconder for this motion. Thank you, Councillor Sullivan and Deputy Mayor. But appreciate you reading that, Ms. Preston. I think it's very self-evident what's being sought here. Can I just call the question on this one? All in favor? Excellent. Okay, introduction and consideration of bylaws. That is done. Period. For questions from the public and media relating to agenda items, I think we've exhausted practically everyone. I think there's no one left. So there's no one here, but we do appreciate the members of our community who came out for previous items, and we'll go to close of meeting. Confirmation bylaw, be it resolved that bylaw 7424 to confirm proceedings of council at its regular meeting held on September 4th, 2024 be adopted and passed. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Wilson. Thank you. Councillor Sullivan. Can I ask you to second that? And I'll call the question. All in favor? Confirmatory bylaw. And then finally, resolution to adjourn at 8:55 p.m. this evening. And I'll look again. Deputy Mayor, can you please move? Councillor Wilson, will you second? Thank you. Calling the question on adjournment. All in favor? Good. Thank you very much. Meeting adjourned.